Thanks, Wendy. As you think about your own career and how your growth, you can think about it in kind of a five-step journey. And you begin at the bottom portion of managing yourself and then leading by example. And then as you grow, you start to manage others, you start to lead teams. And as you grow in your leadership ability and your accountability, your span of influence also increases. And then if you want to grow further, you start to manage department and leading teams, then locations, and then the enterprise altogether. Today, we're going to focus on the just the second tier, which is managing others and leading teams. So it's all about behaviors. The work we do is called behavioral economics, and it's looking at what behaviors are being motivated or what behaviors are being incentive in any given situation. And if you think about it, everything in your life is all about behaviors. Your ultimate success and even your survival depends on your ability to govern your behaviors. And today we're going to explore the behavior of groups and teams. Now on September 17th, CAI is also hosting another webinar by me, and it's all about looking at individual team members. It's called Managing the Team GOAT. So I hope you can mark your calendar on September 17th and join us then. So today we're going to talk about improving team effectiveness, and the stage of team development and health and maturity kind of grow along in these stages. So we're going to talk about the stages, we're going to talk about diagnosing, and then we'll end up with discussions and questions. And a special offer for those who stay to the end of the cast will be made at the end, and we'll talk about that at the end of the podcast. So first of all, we're going to begin with team med school. All right, we're all going to become doctors of our thing, and we're going to learn to diagnose. So we're going to med school now. When you're looking at team success, you got to have engaged employees. They got to have the skills and abilities to do it. They've got to be engaged. You got to have leadership who are transformational, thinking about, because people do more when they feel like their work has meaning. If they feel like they're adding something to their community, to themselves, to what they're doing, and the work has meaning. And then you got to have well-designed systems and processes, and all of these lead up to team success. And when we think about the team, there are certain components that you add into it. The team composition, who makes up the team? Who are the players on the bus? Who are the skills and stuff to bring it? Then you got to think about communication and coordination. How is that done? How does the team work with each other? Is it a remote team? Is it local? How often do you meet? What are the meetings about? Then your working approach. And your working approach is how you interact, the kind of the culture and the climate you create. Then you get into systems, processes, and roles, and then eventually you'll get to mutual accountability where each team member is doing their part, and then everyone feels like they can hold themselves accountable and hold other team members accountable to produce the work of the team. So boiling it down, because we really want to think about what makes this simple. And if you want just one indicator of health and maturity of an organization, it's the team has a shared group identity. They really believe that they are part of a we and not just a series of individuals doing their part. And so if you want a quick diagnostic and say, how's my team doing? Ask the question, do we have a shared group identity? Could we actually say what it was? So health and maturity, it's not a static thing. Just like the healthier you physically, it's an ongoing process. And health is not the absence of disease. It's actually the presence of an optimal healing process. Every day we're being attacked from all kinds of different things physically. And only by having a really healthy immune system do we remain healthy. Well, the same thing can be thought of with teams. They have to have a healthy immune system. They have to have a healing process because you're going to stumble, you're going to make mistakes. But ultimately, it's how well that team works and overcomes some of these barriers that you continue to grow as a healthy organization. And the other aspect to think about is health needs change with maturity. I don't have the same health needs as an infant, and now that I'm a grandfather, I have other needs. So thinking about you're going to a doctor, how do you do it? Well, we go for a checkup, and then we diagnose any issues. We make a prescription, and then we follow up. So the same thing when you're thinking about your team. You go for a checkup, you diagnose any kind of issues or concerns with your team, you kind of come up with a prescription, and then you follow up. So let's look at this diagnosis. This is the actual from Wikipedia, which is a great resource. Diagnosis is the process of determining which ailments or condition explain the symptoms. And this is the same thing when working with teams. And when you work with a diagnosis, you collect from a history, you kind of look at what's happened, the physical exam, and there's often diagnostic procedures, exams, and tests. And it can be challenging because many different signs and symptoms can be nonspecific or indicate different types of causes that could be behind whatever this ailment is. And so it's helped by the recognition of patterns. So when you're doing a diagnosis, you look at the patterns. Well, what are the patterns? How do these symptoms interrelate with each other? When do we see them? How do they occur? And so on. And so thinking about patterns is really important for thinking about your team and the health of your team. So we have these predictable patterns of team development. All right. When I was the global manager for workforce development, I had 28 countries and had to figure out, well, what is it that actually consistently works and what applies to every group, no matter where they're at and what size group. So it follows a consistent pattern. And each stage is characterized by the needs of the individuals at that stage of the team maturity and their stage in their career and the demands of the team. And then to move forward, you have to think about effective leadership and then timely management intervention. Just being aware of something but doing nothing about it doesn't help. So we think about the stages in 5 ways. Forming, we get together and we're trying to figure out what we're going to do, establish a common vision, develop the team, coordination, communication. We're just trying to get together. And if you think about this in real simple ways, when I first meet you and we're going to do something, your first question is, what are we going to do? What's the purpose? Why are we here? Do I trust you? And what's in it for me? Is this going to be good for me? And if that's all I got to think about as a leader of a group is clear communication of what we're trying to do, understanding of how it's going to benefit the people involved, and then establish that layer of trust. If we do that, we'll move to this next level of we'll call focusing. And focusing is helping to understand, all right, so I understand what we're trying to do, but how are we going to do it? What's the process? What's the systems? What do you want me to do? What's my roles and responsibilities? If I don't form well, I stumble. I get false starts. I get frustration. I get meetings that go nowhere and meetings to talk about with more meetings. And I need to come back and figure out what I missed and think about it. Did I not explain what we're trying to do? Do people not trust me, or do they think there's nothing good in it for them? So if you have some people that aren't really working well, then ask yourself those 3 questions. Is there some benefit for what they do? If you focus the group and you develop the systems and roles and responsibilities and you solve any kind of problems that exist, then you start to see increased commitment. People start to feel like, hey, this is great. I feel like we're part of a team. They're showing up. They're asking questions. People say, hey, I was thinking about that question you said yesterday, and last night at 10 o'clock, I was thinking about this. If they ask you those kind of questions, that means they're engaged. They're thinking. But if you say, hey, that report I was talking about yesterday, and the guy says, no, I don't remember what you're talking about, there's a different level of commitment in there. If we don't focus, we're going to fragment. People are going to go off in different directions. People are doing different things. The team is just scattering in different ways. People working on their own agendas. I need to come back and refocus, figure out what I missed. Are the systems messed up? Roles and responsibilities are confusing. I haven't solved the problems. If I get commitment, then I start to see the team performance increasing. I got to sustain it. I got to keep it going over a long period of time. So I've got to validate the customer requirements and balancing resources, and also have to have a work-life balance, because a lot of times in the startup part of a team, you're running, you're doing all kinds of stuff, but people can't run at that pace forever. So you've got to balance that work-life. If not, you're going to get variable performance. And the variable performance is sometimes good, sometimes bad, depending on who's watching and who's involved at the time. And you've all been there where things were at the crunch time and you were putting in killer hours. You were staying till 2 or 3 in the morning and you got it done. You pulled it across the line, but you can't run at that pace forever. And so the difference between variable performance and the previous ailments of a team is that I can't just go back and demand commitment. Any